Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Make Hijrah family. It's your boy Hamza Abu Dalia back again. Yeah, where we left off last time regarding my Hijrah story is, don't forget we said that obviously we was in rehab with my mother-in-law, my wife at the time who was pregnant, and my mother-in-law took a slip, and it was quite a positive experience. Not the fact that she obviously snapped her wrist, but how she was dealt with, and how the cost, the precision, and the very, very quick process that we went through from her having the accident, going to the clinic on rehab, being referred onto the main hospital, and coming home. And I think I said to you that the whole total cost for the day was about 40 odd pounds at the time. Yeah, 40 odd pounds. Everything was good. And the fact that my mother-in-law was actually a head nurse, used to be a head nurse. So she found the whole experience quite positive. So in this chapter, I want to discuss what me and my wife at the time decided to do based upon that positive experience in Egypt. We was actually staying in rehab. So we returned to the UK, and we was convinced that Egypt was the place. Egypt was the place. Egypt was the place. So we kind of declared to our families and friends, we're gonna go to Egypt. So what we decided to do, and this area is kind of a bit shady in my memory because I've been racking my brain. What did we do? What we do? But I know one of the major things that we decided to do was to see, I can't remember whether we had actually bought the property or we decided what we was going to do was buy a property. But whether we bought the property, whether we had bought the property at the time or not, the whole plan was that we were going to buy not a shell, but buy a fixer-upper, get to the point where we wanted. Obviously, my daughter hadn't been born yet. In fact, we already had the property. That's right. We already had the property. So the long-term plan was to obviously have my daughter, bring her up to a certain age, but in the meantime, refurb this property, sell the property, and take the profit from this to relocate. But at the time before we went to Egypt, we wasn't entirely sure where we was going to end up. Yeah. And don't forget, at the time, and I'm going to keep repeating myself during this series, yeah, nothing ever happens before its time. Yeah. Because at the time, my mind was focused on moving myself and my family out of the UK. So my hijrah wasn't fi sabilillah at that time. It was just basically because I had my daughter, and it was a relatively new marriage, and I was trying to repair the damage of the past. So I thought, this is it. I'm not going to go through the whole divorce thing again. I'm going to try my hardest to be the man I should be. And one of the things that both me and my wife agreed is that, we didn't want to bring up any children in the UK for obvious reasons. Yeah. So yes, we returned to the UK and we said, right, full speed ahead. So another fuzzy area that I can't recollect. I can't remember whether it was before we went to Egypt or after we came back from that trip from Egypt. Yeah, because it was still up in, like I said to you, I hadn't made the intention Hijrah fi sabilillah. It was basically to get my family out of the UK because I wanted a better standard of life. And I wanted to go to the Muslim world, but it wasn't fi sabilillah. Yeah. So I've kind of told this story before, but I couldn't recollect, or in fact I still can't recollect what part of this journey that my intention now was not only for me, but for fi sabilillah, because like I said, I was reading the Quran one day and I got to the verses, I think is it Surah Al-Ma'idah or Surah Al-Nisa, verse 98 to 100, when the angels come to them in death and ask them, why are you here? All the way through to the ayats, that was 98, all the way through to ayat 100. And Allah stipulates, you know, the angels are confused. They're saying, well, why are you here? Why you died here? And from what I understand about that ayah, it was when the command for Hijrah had been given and some of the Muslims stayed behind and they ended up fighting alongside the Quraysh against the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were killed in battle. So the angels were like, why are you here? You know, and their response was, we were weak and oppressed in the land. And the angels replied, isn't Allah's land vast? And then Allah interjects and says, blah, 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 you know, what he says, yeah? And then it gives the conditions. I'm not sick. I'm not weak. I can't say I can't say that I hadn't devised a plan, because I actually had devised a plan. So that's when the ayat basically straightened me up and slapped me into reality. Yeah, it's all very good. It's all like, you know, like the hadith says, I think it was, I don't know if it was Ibn Umar or one of the Sahabas basically said that, I think it was Umar, said the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, you know, whoever makes Hijrah for a woman has made Hijrah for a woman. Yeah. So, you know, Hijrah fi sabilillah is Hijrah fi sabilillah, because Allah's commanded it and it's the best thing, and He's commanded it because it's the best thing for you to do. Yeah. And regarding that hadith, there had been a sister who had moved to Medina, and she had received a marriage request from somebody who was still living in Mecca. Yeah. And the sister had basically turned around and said, I'm not coming back to Mecca to get married to you. You have to come to Medina. So the brother traveled to Medina, and I also believe that he took his shahada, became Muslim before he married her and they get married. And hence the reason, or one of the reasons for that hadith. If I'm wrong, this is what I can recollect. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. It's important. Yeah, let me know in the comments. So anyway, it was that when I read that ayat, or those ayats, I basically, my mindset shifted. Like I can say instantaneously, like, okay, cool. But again, what was surprising to me, you know, we'd been to Dubai, we'd been to Ghana, I'd been to Sudan earlier, yeah? And it's not like I hadn't picked up the Quran beforehand, that was the first time I picked up the Quran. So I'd probably read that ayah a few times and just read through it. But I think because of what I was going through at that time about being determined to leave the UK and then having that religious renaissance in terms of my feelings for Islam when I went to Egypt, and then obviously when we got back here, it's full speed ahead, we're going to do this, and then bam, read those ayats, and I was thinking, this is no longer I want to go. This is now I have to go. Because, you know, Allah talks in the Quran about those people that don't make Hijrah. You know, in some translations it talks about punishment. In some translations it talks about hellfire. Yeah. So when I done some more research into it and I looked into it some more, that is where a lot of the scholars say that that's the reason why it's obligatory. One of the reasons why it's like they make the Hijrah obligatory. And I looked at the other, I did, to be fair, I did look at the other opinions who said basically it's recommended, yeah. And the other opinion that stipulates that based upon that hadith, there's no more Hijrah after the Fath of Mecca. Yeah. So a lot of people look at that hadith and say, okay, well, what it means is Hijrah is of no more because Mecca has now been liberated. And even in that, some people say that no. There is no Hijrah from Mecca to Medina. There's no need because now Medina has now been liberated and is now part of the Muslim society. You have Mecca and Medina's path. So why would you need to make Hijrah from Mecca to Medina or even Medina to Mecca when they both belong to the Muslims now? And others see it as no. Hijrah was only obligatory from Mecca to Medina. The concept of the concept of Hijrah was only compulsory or obligatory while Mecca was under the rule of the Quraysh. Now that Mecca has now been open to the Muslims or been taken over by the Muslims, the whole concept of Hijrah is of no more. It's no longer an obligation anymore. So I could be in the belly of the beast in the middle of the UK and I still don't have to make Hijrah because all those centuries ago, what they're basically saying is Hijrah has been abrogated because it was just something that happened. It was only something that needed to be done between Mecca and Medina. Yeah. And then some people have that same opinion, but they add a caveat. They add the caveat that, okay, now Hijrah from a non-Muslim country to a Muslim country is now only recommended. Right? So if that's clear, yeah. But to me, after I'd done my research, I was convinced, nah, mate, it's highly, it's compulsory. I have to get myself out of this place, yeah. So that was it. I went home. Well, I don't know if I was home at the time, but I sat down and I told my wife at the time, I said, listen, this is now no longer for me, it's now no longer something that we want to do. It's something that we want to do, but I have to do. Yeah. And then in the next video, I'll let you know how that changed up the dynamics a little bit and how something quite, I wouldn't say drastic, you know what? Something quite drastic happened that kind of put a cog in the works. Yeah. So inshallah, until the next video, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.